I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're speaking with a wonderful author. Her name is Reverend Marcia Cope Fleischman, and she has written a powerful book. It is called If God is Love, Why Do I Feel So Bad? Considering Our Images of God. This insightful book invites readers to explore their personal perceptions of God, examining how these images influence their relationship with the divine and their spiritual well-being. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Atticus Publishing for helping us put her in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support writers like her by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing her lovely book. The links are below this interview. Marcia, great to see you here today on Spotlight.
Great to be here.
From looking at your background, I see the images of the divine, in your house at least, are a little bit different than those we are used to. Tell us a little bit about some of the paintings that you have behind you and how you find inspiration with that artwork.
Well, I was sick for 5.5 years, taking some bad medication, and I had medicine pumped directly into my heart. I wore a pump 24/7 for 5.5 years, and then I had a life-saving double lung transplant. I had to move to St. Louis to get that, to be there when the lungs were available. And there was a woman who volunteered and helped us paint. I had always wanted to paint. So after my lung transplant, I moved back to the Kansas City area where I was on staff at Broadway Baptist Church, and thought, well, I always loved angel stories. So I thought, well, I'll paint some angels. We were trying to raise money for the kitchen remodeling, which hadn't been done since 1932. And so I said, well, maybe I'll paint some angels and raise some money. And they said, great. And the Spirit spoke to me and said, no such thing as old visions of angels, Marcia. I'll give you new visions to paint. And I said, well, that's fun, God, but I don't know how to draw. And so then I looked at a Picasso book and thought, oh, okay, I'm game. I can do something simple. And the next day I was having quiet time and this image popped into my mind. I have visions. I'm a charismatic practitioner of spiritual gifts. Anyhow, this image came to mind and I drew it real fast, and I just kept getting images and started painting and raised $5,000 for the kitchen fund. And these are some of the paintings that I've done as part of my vision work of angels. And they're very strange. They're not what you think of.
Well,
Airy,
they're
very
great
lightweight
because
angel.
they're bright and uplifting. Some of the art from the Renaissance, if we look at how Jesus and the angels and Mary are depicted, it tends to be, celestial. It tends to be a little dark in tone and color. Yours are bright and uplifting. And I thought that might actually play into the theme of your book a little bit of, if God is love,
Yeah.
why do I feel so bad? Let me ask you that question. If God is love, why do I feel so bad?
Well, I read a book long time ago by Dennis Sheila and Matthew Lynn, and Dennis, it called Good Goats, Bad Goats. And Dennis says in the book that as his image of God changed, he changed. As his image of God became more loving, he became more loving, less judgmental. And that just really stuck with me. And as a pastor, I started listening to people and how they talked, what Bible references they had, and it was reflecting the images of God that they had within. So I started just interviewing people and taking notes. I really worked on this book for 15 years and I started painting the images that people shared. And then some of my own ideas of old images of God, the images in my book. Here's my book. The image called The God of Don'ts is the image I had of God, the God that said, don't do this, don't do that, don't dance,
Right.
don't have sex, don't do, and that was my image. And I gathered, and a lot of people have very negative images of God.
Mhm.
One man was introduced to our church and heard that we practice hearing from the Spirit. And a friend said, what do you think of that? And he said, oh, I don't even want God to know where I am, much less hear him talk to me. And that's a reference to the image that we carry. I met a man here. I'm in senior living now. I moved into independent senior living, and he was saying he lived across the street from a church. Anytime the doors were open, they were there. They had evangelists who came and talked about hellfire and brimstone. scared him to death. And he
Mm.
said, he's 80 now. He said, I still carry those images with me. And so my purpose of my book is to try to pry those images loose and help people let go. To me, spiritual growth is marked by the ability to reject what you used to believe, letting go of old beliefs. And this book is intended to help people surface what their feelings are about God and try to move to an understanding of God as love and energy of love.
Well, that's wonderful. I mean, if I look at my own like spiritual journey as a practicing Christian, there were those that made, like you said, the God of don't.
Mhm.
They tended to be the older priests and monsignors who educated me. But then there
Yes.
were the younger brothers and priests who had more of an open view about God, like you have. And it's a much more positive viewpoint. It's a much more positive feeling. And it really does impact your relationship with God, right?
Yes. Well, Richard Rohr, I don't know if you're familiar with him, Father Richard Rohr writes meditations. He's
Mhm.
created the Center for Action and Contemplation. And he says, even to the fact that our image of God creates our life.
Hmm.
So it's that profound and an influence. And most times people just aren't really aware of what they're feeling about God or, yeah.
Absolutely. Tell the folks a little bit about the overview of your book. What will they find within the pages of your book?
Well, it turned out to be a workbook.
Yeah.
So I have images of God, starting with the very first image is the one we talk to.
Mhm.
And many of us talk to God, pray, and some have absolutely no idea of what that's about. There's a story. My book is full of stories of people's interaction with God and spiritual matters. One was I heard SEAL Team 6 soldier talking on TV, and he's talking about being in the middle of gunfire. And he said, I'm not religious, but I don't know what's out there, but I talked to whoever was out there.
Mm.
And so I start with that, the one we talked to. And then I go through old images, God as judge. A lot of people feel like God is judging them all the time.
Mm.
And the God of don'ts, as I mentioned. But
Yeah.
then there's some things of like God as Santa Claus, because sometimes people, the only time they talk to God is when they're asking for stuff. And then they get disappointed or don't believe in God because stuff doesn't show up. So anyhow, just I have a whole range, but then I move more toward, I also include the feminine images of God, that in the very beginning in Genesis, it says God created them male and female. God created them in God's image.
Mm.
And that whole feminine part has been left out for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So that's part of the images that I include, God as female, the feminine God who's creating humanity.
Mm.
Uh, Also, then I move on to where I talked to my niece a long time ago and said, "What's your image of God?" And she said, and she made energy wave motion
Mm.
with her hand, and it's God as energy, the energy of love. So we don't even understand God as spirit, although it says in the New Testament God is spirit, but we keep trying to put God in human form. So I move into God as spirit and light and energy.
Yeah, it's funny. My wife was raised in China and no religion is allowed. So she's technically an atheist. And whenever she says, oh God, or this God or that God, I said, you can't say any of that stuff. You don't believe in God. And then she says,
Love
well, I
it.
believe there's a force and a creative force in the universe. And I
There you
said, well, then
go.
you do believe in God. Because
Yeah.
God isn't an old man with a long beard up in heaven watching over you. It's a spiritual force. And God is whatever you conceive him to be.
Hmm.
So
Or
it's
her.
interesting that the personification of God is sometimes problematic to intellectuals and people who haven't moved past, the imagery of God.
And it's hard to get away from the personification, making God in our form. I think it was Voltaire who said, uh, God created man in his image and man returned the favor.
Exactly. Exactly. And it
Yeah.
wasn't much of a favor because we are pretty flawed as individuals, and certainly God is not. Um, Wonderful. So this book includes an element of self-reflection and journaling for your
Yes.
readers, which
Yes.
I
I
think
started
making
to
it
talk about,
interactive makes it a powerful tool as well, don't you think?
yes, because I want people to use it like a can opener to
Mm,
pry open their spiritual lives and reflect on the images that I present and how that affects them. Have they ever thought of God in that way? And what they need to do to change that. So yeah, it's a good workbook.
wonderful. Another question I had, you mentioned early in the interview that you had a double lung transplant, which is obviously life-saving. It also could be life transformative.
Yes, it is.
Did that procedure affect your faith at all?
Oh my gosh, holy cow, yes. I did find because I've loved God and followed God all my life, and I found I just couldn't trust. There were words people saw that I was gonna be okay. They heard from spirit that I was gonna be okay, and I just could not believe it until I woke up from my surgery alive, and
Amazing.
then I believed. But my sister said, and I thought it's so profound, the events in our lives that have the most power to transform us, we would never choose.
Right.
And that's a message I love to give people, that the hardships in life can transform us, but we'd never choose them because they're so hard. I would never choose that path, but I entered into it unknowing, but I've been transformed. And I said in the beginning, I wanted to get to the place where I could be grateful for what I had survived
Mm,
because of the effect on my life. And it's been a
amazing.
great effect.
Amazing. How many years ago did you have your surgery?
Almost 21.
Amazing.
Yes, yes, I said I intend to be the oldest living lung transplant person, and I'm getting there. I've met someone 26 years out, but I intend to keep going. I've been in rejection for 12 years, but there is a procedure that I take every month,
Mm,
kind of like dialysis, and
mm.
that keeps me going. I'm good.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Yes, it
Well, if you don't
is.
believe in miracles after getting surgery like that and surviving it for more than 2 decades, I mean, think of all the life you've had over those 21 years that you
Yes,
wouldn't
yeah.
have had if it were not for the lung transplant, right?
Yes, yes, and I'm grateful to the donor family. I met my donor family after 4 years, and, I met the young woman, it was her brother who was my donor, and got to thank them personally, and
Mm,
I'm grateful to all the donor families out there
yeah,
who, in the midst of such grief, make a life-changing decision.
absolutely. With every you take, I'm sure you thank him, you know.
Yes, I do. His name
It
is
is.
Andrew.
Yeah, it's a total gift of life. How old were
Yeah,
you when you had the surgery?
53.
53. So you were very, very young. To
Yes, I got
me,
sick when I was 48.
amazing.
Mhm.
Amazing. Well,
Yeah,
God bless you. I'm so happy the surgery
thank you.
worked out. So happy that you've put forth such a beautiful book. Before we leave you today, I was wondering if there's anything else you'd like the folks at home to know about. If God is love, why do I feel so bad?
Um, Well, I want to challenge people to reflect on their spiritual adventure. And what I have come to believe, I've come to reject all the idea that we are sinful, horrible people, that God is upset with us. I believe we have come here to learn and to transform. We can't think our way into heaven. We can't go
Mhm.
by rules and get into heaven. We have to feel God's love. And I'm part of Integral Christian Network, which practices a meditation that opens our hearts to the experience of God's love. So I encourage people to do that, to open their hearts and know that God is this loving force in the universe that is all about helping us transform and become more loving, and who believes in us.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Amazing, amazing. Very, very inspiring. Reverend Marcia Cope Fleischman has written a powerful book, an inspiring book, a book you're going to love. It is called If God is Love, Why Do I Feel So Bad? Considering Our Images of God. It's an insightful book, and it will invite you to explore your own personal perceptions of God, examining how these images influence your relationship with the divine and your spiritual well-being. It's a book you don't want to miss. The links are below this interview. Marcia, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Thank you, Logan. I appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun. Great
I
to
enjoyed
meet you.
talking to you immensely. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time. This time until next time on Spotlight.